It is ironic that our planet consists of 70% of water, and people do not have enough clean and safe water to drink. More than 840,000 people die each year from water-related diseases. This is more than the entire city of San Francisco. Every 21 seconds, another child dies from water-related illness. Having this frightening information in mind, the purpose of this video is to investigate the issue of water scarcity as a modern catastrophe. This is Paul, a normal human being like any of us. His body, like everyone else, is composed of approximately 60% of water. Moreover, it is an essential resource for agriculture all over the world. It is estimated that in 10 years, 800 million people will be living in countries with absolute water scarcity. When Paul first heard the expression water scarcity, he wasn't familiar with the term. Therefore, he decided to investigate the whole problem from the very beginning. Water scarcity is the lack of sufficient available water resources to meet the demand of water usage within a region. It can be either physical or economic. Physical water scarcity refers to inadequate water resources to meet a country's or regional demand, including the water needed to fulfill the demand of ecosystems to function effectively. On the other hand, economic water scarcity is caused by a lack of investment in infrastructure or technology to draw water from appropriate sources. Water shortages may be caused by climate changes, such as altered weather patterns including droughts or floods, increased pollution or increased human demand along with overuse of water. Paul decided to take a close look on the different factors that led to water scarcity. Water pollution comes from many sources including pesticides and fertilizers that wash away from farms, untreated human wastewater and industrial waste. Even groundwater is not protected from pollution, as many pollutants can leach into underground aquifers. Some effects are immediate, as when harmful bacteria from human waste contaminate water and make it unfit to drink or swim in it. In other instances, such as toxic substances from industrial processes, it may take years to build up in the environment and food chain before their effects are fully recognized. Agriculture uses 70% of the world's accessible fresh water, but some 60% of this is wasted due to leaky irrigation system, inefficient application methods, as well as the cultivation of crops that are too thirsty for the environment in which they are grown. This wasteful use of water is drying out rivers, lakes, and underground aquifers. Many countries that produce large amounts of food, including India, China, Australia, Spain, and United States, have reached or are close to reaching their water resources limits. Additionally, it is projected 70% increase in demand for food by the year 2050, when the world's population is forecast to be 9 billion. In the last 50 years, the human population has more than doubled. This rapid growth, with accompanying economic development and industrialization, has transformed water ecosystems around the world and resulted in a massive loss of biodiversity. Today, 41% of the world's population lives in river basins that are under water stress. Concern about water availability grows as freshwater use continues its unsustainable levels. Furthermore, these new faces also need food, shelter, and clothing, thus resulting in additional pressure on freshwater through the production of commodities and energy. 750 million people, 84% of them living in rural areas, do not have a sufficient supply of water, and roughly 2 billion people do not have access to adequate sanitation facilities. Adequate defined a single water tap shared among hundreds of people. That's almost 2.5 times the United States population with approximately 1 in 9 people. Paul asked himself whether this problem exists because simply there is not enough water for each and every one of us. And the answer is simple. There is enough fresh water on the planet for 7 billion people, but it is distributed unevenly, and too much of it is wasted, polluted, or unsustainably managed. Most of us probably have no problem when we want or need water, any time of day or night. as safe clean water flows right off our taps, with virtually no effort from our side, and we can use it for drinking, for washing, for irrigation of the garden, at a very low cost to us. In many parts of the world, getting enough water to drink every day may mean walking miles to fetch it, which directly impact the lives of those people, especially women and children, who are primarily responsible for water collection in developing countries. Because it not only takes a huge amount of time, estimated 200 million hours each day globally, but also takes a physical toll, as the water is often transported on their backs. So after discovering all this, Paul starts wondering if water scarcity can affect his business. He is the owner of a golf resort in Spain which requires a lot of water to function properly. He decides to do some research to find out how the hospitality industry is affected by water scarcity. The hospitality industry is currently facing severe concerns due to the fact that the world is suffering from tremendous water shortage in several locations globally, where the arrival of international tourists is high. The future expansion and investments of new hotels calls for a more sustainable water policy, especially as research reveals that tourists tend to use more water than the local inhabitants, which contributes to water shortage. A clear evidence of this issue is emerging in the Mediterranean area, an extremely popular tourist destination where several islands now has to get their water supply from mainland, as the water supply no longer is sufficient to cover for the demand. It has been estimated that by 2030 the world might face a 40% gap in the supply-demand chain of fresh water, which will impact heavily on future economic growth. In the same time, higher average hotel standards and the creation of new spas, wellness areas and pools are projected to intensify the need for water all over the world. Also, golf and skiing are two recreational activities constantly growing. Let's take a look at one example. A typical golf course requires 370,000 to 3.7 million liters of water per week in summer to maintain healthy vegetation. The quantity of golf courses in Spain skyrocketed by 83% to the total number of 289 between 1997 and 2005. The forecast also anticipated an increase of this number by 50% in 2015. Those news come like a shock to Paul, who until now has been running his resort without paying any closer attention to the use of water. He also realizes that other hotels are far ahead of him in terms of sustainable water policies. For example, he finds out that IHG, one of the largest hotel chains in the world, has reduced their water use in water-stressed areas by 4.6%. Additionally, they have mapped all of their hotels including their pipeline to understand which hotels operate or will operate in water-stressed areas. He decides to create his own green strategy that could also be useful for hotels in general. Here are some of the key points from Paul's water reducing plan. Are your company's production processes or those of key suppliers vulnerable to water shortages? Does your company's long-term strategy take into consideration whether water is a critical component of sustainable and reliable operations? Are possible water issues included in your risk assessment and mitigation plans? What are the water footprints of your organization and products, and how can you reduce them? Water shortages will cause the increase of the price for the services that involves water use, which will affect the hospitality industry accordingly. Purchasing water and disposal of dirty water are becoming increasingly expensive activities. Direct water use varies between 100 and 2,000 liters per guest per night, and bigger resorts even more. Besides that, housekeeping attendants tend to misuse the water as well. The possible way for reacting to it could be implementing certification to reduce the overall usage of water resources. Water conservation is not the first issue that crosses hotel managers' mind when making out management agenda. Issues such as revenue management, marketing, and personnel are prioritized. However, from the perspective of the guest, the use of water is an integral part of their experience. Water restrictions would result in unhappy guest stays, and so maintaining the adequate water comfort must be central to all the water management strategies. Any water use reduction program must have the full support of their staff in order to achieve visible results. After understanding that the misuse of water can lead to such consequences from the entire society and for himself personally as the owner of a business, Paul will definitely adapt his attitudes and habits towards responsible and sustainable management.